Right, and we are recording. Ugh. Okay, so welcome to episode 3 of the Catching Up with Kat podcast. Yay, woohoo! We made it to episode 3. It's really actually episode 2, but you know. Yeah, so last time I did this, let's see. I was having a bit of a mentee bee, as the young people call it. And that was not very fun, but I will say I'm doing better. I'm feeling a lot better, especially today. It was still when I woke up this morning, it was still a bit of that feeling of like, I want to sleep in, I don't want to get up. I felt like bleh, right? But overall, there's been improvements. So that's nice. And I saw my therapist, which was very good actually. I had a very good time at therapy. I always get so, I don't know, anxious before going to therapy because I'm like, what am I going to talk about? In my mind, I'm like, we've already talked about like the story of my life, got that done in a couple of sessions. I've talked about everything, I've gone through everything, I guess, or all the key stuff. And I'm like, yeah, okay, we talked about it. There we go, bada bing, bada boom, it's done. That's therapy, right? So, yeah, it turns out no, that's not how it's working out for me. There are certain topics that I think there's no way we're going to talk any more about this topic. I'm like, there's no way, right? And then we end up talking about it. My cat just launched herself at thin air for some reason. Okay, yeah, so yeah, then we end up talking about it over and over again. And I have this problem where I'm thinking to myself as I'm in therapy, and I know this is not how it works, but I'm thinking to myself, like, oh my God, I'm talking about this again. We're somehow talking about this again. My therapist must be so bored of hearing the same thing. And I'm like, man, I feel like I should ask her how she's doing. It's just therapy is so weird because it just like, it breaks all of like the social norms that you're taught. And I think that's bizarre. You know, you're taught, I guess social interactions are very much like you exchange things. You both say, hi, how are you? I mean, we do that anyway, but then like if you talk about something about yourself, then you ask the other person like, oh, you ask them about themselves. That's how conversations work, but not in therapy. In therapy, it's very different, but it's been pretty good. I did have quite a episode. I guess that's how you can explain it. Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about 2 topics. I've written down 2 topics so that I don't forget. The first one is reconciliation, a beautiful topic. And the second one is Ozempic. um, I was kind of thinking last night, man, I wonder what I'm going to talk about. I always think like ahead about these things, and I'm like, what am I even going to be saying? I don't know. And then this morning I was like, Ozempic. I was doing yoga and I went, I'm going to talk about Ozempic. Why? I feel kind of passionate about the whole thing, but we'll get into it. Passionate, I don't know. I feel kind of like it's topical, but it's also a lot of people are talking about it, and I think a lot of people are very mean and judgy, so I kind of want to talk about it. But yeah, first things first, reconciliation. So that was like a big thing in therapy this time around. Well, it wasn't that much of a big thing. It was more at the end of the session, but it's the part that had the biggest impact, and it's actually part of my homework, so that's friggin' awesome. Nah, I don't know how to go about this. I'm gonna share like what I feel like sharing. I'm not gonna go too deep in the details just in case I'm not really that comfortable yet. I don't know, but basically, um, through therapy, I've learned that there are people in my life who are toxic and who I hate throwing around that word because it's like these days everyone is saying it. There's toxic this, toxic that, and narcissism this, narcissism that. And I don't want to throw around words when there might not be that, but in this case it is kind of like, yeah, toxic. By definition, by all means, everything that I've talked about with my therapist, it's like, yeah, this is a toxic thing. So it's kind of like when you have a toxic encounter or you have a relationship in your life that's doing these toxic things, you need to do something about it for your own mental health, you know? And it's really hard. And so what I did is I cut contact, and it's been really difficult. I don't think anyone makes that kind of a decision just willy-nilly, you know what I'm saying? There was this thing I was listening to. I listen to a lot of podcasts, and I was listening to is it Mel B? No. Who's that guy? Tony, what's his name? Oh, the self-help guy. Oh, that's gonna be bugging me for the rest of the day. I think he has a wife, and I think I was listening to her podcast because they have the same last name. Her name's like Mel something. Is it Mel? It's not Mel B. I kept thinking Mel B, but it's like Mel Robbins. There we go. I think she's Tony Robbins' wife. I'm not sure about that. But they have the same last name, both of them. So I don't know. Anyway, I was listening to Mel Robbins' podcast, and I watched like one episode of hers, and it was about anxiety, and it was before I started therapy actually. So I probably listened to it in like the start of last year, 2023, and I found it was a very helpful episode. She had like a neuroscientist on it, and they were talking about anxiety and all of the things you can do to help manage it. Before I went to therapy or even got like medical help for my anxiety, I went to see a GP, a general practitioner. I was trying everything in my power to manage my anxiety by myself, and I've been doing that like my whole life. So I was very determined to learn like a way of managing it, and God, let's say I had some success, but since going on medication, it's been a lot better. Yeah. So anyway, I'm listening to like Mel Robbins' podcast, and this was more recently, like a few weeks ago, because I was going out for my lovely little hot girl walk. I always listen to podcasts when I go on my walks, and there was this one where it was titled like, "This research study will change the way you live your life," and I was like, oh, I like rolled my eyes. I was like, whatever, right? I guess talking about this is kind of going to be very revealing, but I don't care. I've decided I don't care. This episode was talking about like how the amount of time you spend with your family drastically drops off after like you hit like 18. And so it was basically a whole episode, in my opinion, okay, this is what I got from it. It felt like she was totally shaming people who like, I don't know, have like stuff going on in their life and they don't spend time with their family. Let's just say she wasn't doing that though. But the thing that got me off on the wrong foot at the beginning of it is that at the very beginning she said, "Oh, you guys respond so well to my podcast episodes about like narcissism, toxic family, cutting people off, and yada yada yada, going no contact." And then she said, "Well, guys, this is going to be something very different, and it's going to be about actually spending time with your family." And she was going on like, "Guys, you can't let little things make you go like cut people off. You need to actually like give people grace, and especially like family, and if you're cutting people off and going no contact, you can't just do it because like they didn't show up for Christmas dinner or something." And as soon as I heard that, I was like, girl, what the hell are you saying right now? Oh my god, it made me so angry, actually. I'm not gonna lie, I listened to it for like maybe 10 more minutes and then I had to turn it off because I was just like, there's no way that you're going to make so much content about like one specific thing, like going no contact with toxic people. Like it's a very serious thing, and I'm not like the way that she described it is like, oh, you can't just go and do it for every little thing. I don't think people are doing it over little things. Like, who the fuck, first F bomb, who the flip is actually cutting off their parents because they've finished off their ice cream tub or something? Like, that's not happening, and I'm sorry, but like, that's just like she didn't need to say any of that. Honestly, she didn't need to. It was actually quite aggravating for me. No one's making that decision half-heartedly. I guess there are some people in the world who maybe they're a little bit uh they just act without thinking, sure. But I think the majority of people, if you're gonna go no contact, it's like the very last resort that you're going for. And it's like, I'm speaking from experience. It's the very last resort, and it's definitely not the path you wanted to take. I don't think it's ever the path anyone wants to take. It's horrible. And like the amount of anxiety that comes with it for yourself afterwards, it's I don't think anyone would choose that for themselves voluntarily. I don't think anyone wants that. It's just sometimes what has to happen. And yeah, so that pissed me off. I'm trying to think, like, how did I get to this conversation? But that annoyed me. Okay, I'm just gonna say that annoyed me. Boo, Mel Robbins. That was a L take, I would say. Anyway, the rest of like what I heard from her podcast was that like, oh, your time spent with family is so much less, and that we should be thinking more about how we spend time with our family because people are getting old, and then yada yada yada. You don't want to waste time, all that jazz. And I guess to tie it back in with what I was saying before about the reconciliation stuff, is my therapist was asking me, like, if you were to reconcile with this person, what would you do? What would you do? That's exactly how she said it. She was like, what would you say you'd want from that? And the first answer I had to that was, I don't think it's possible. And she was like, yeah, okay. And then she said, but what if it was possible, and like, if in an ideal world, if everything, all the boxes were to be ticked, what would those boxes be? And I felt like in my head, yeah, and I felt like I was anxious at the question because I still had it in my brain that like this is not possible to me, and I couldn't even think of the criteria for reconciliation. I don't think I've ever really had to think about that too hard. I guess with like a lot of things, a lot of the time I feel like I'm very forgiving, or I give people grace, especially too much. And I think for this, to have like an actual criteria of like what reconciliation means or what it needs to be, that's kind of weird to me. It's kind of alien to me, I guess, which is like not fun. I don't know. It's like a very different territory, I suppose. I don't know. I mean, anyway, like the question just had me completely stumped. I was like, well, my ideal world. What does an ideal world look like for me? Especially with reconciliation in mind. And I couldn't think of anything. Like, I listed off like maybe like two things, and then I started to dissociate right there. And I think it was just horrible. I mean, I've dissociated before many times, but this was like nothing. I guess it was so weird because it wasn't like I could distract myself with anything. I was sitting in this therapy office, and I was dissociating and I was uncomfortable, but usually when you're at home and something like that happens, you can just like do whatever and forget about it or bury it, I guess. And in a therapy office, you really need to sit with that feeling, and that was really uncomfortable and it was horrible. And I still can't really figure out what I need for reconciliation, the criteria specifically. I think one thing that I'm struggling with a lot is thinking of like what's the right thing to ask for even. And I know there's probably no right or wrong answer when it comes to that, but I just don't know. I don't know. I need some time to think about it, really. And I think it kind of I'm not going to be disappointed in myself for not being able to answer the question because it's therapy, you know. There's no deadline for anything. There's no problems with not being able to answer something. It's not school. But in my brain, I'm like, I couldn't answer it. And then I dissociated. So now my therapist thinks I told her about it when it was happening, and she thinks I might have to do EMDR. So we're gonna look into doing some extra therapy. Yay! I don't know how I feel about EMDR. I'm kind of looking forward to it. If it does like what it says it does, then that's great. But I don't think she'd suggested it if she didn't think I was a good candidate for it. But yeah, if you don't know, EMDR is like, it's like eye movement something reprocessing. I always forget what it stands for, honestly. Yeah, so it basically, how my therapist described it is that like when you have, there are like two different types of like memories, right? There's your autobiographical memories and then there's your trauma memories. And so your autobiographical memories are stored and they're not very like clear. They're usually like a very unclear image in your head, but it's more of like a time where you felt good or like, oh, I remember I had an ice cream on this day. It's like very like casual. Whereas traumatic memories are stored in a way where it's almost like the body creates like a wall around it. It walls it off like a cyst almost. And it doesn't get processed in the same way an autobiographical memory does. It doesn't get processed. That's the thing. That's the key thing here, guys. Get out your textbooks and start taking notes. Yeah, so it's one of those things where you need to do the eye movement thingy because they found in research that when you do like these eye movements and you like mix in some other stuff, like sometimes they do tapping on your knees and shit, that creates a way to like actually reprocess what the memory is. So you kind of like I think you close your eyes and you talk through like what happened and like the details, and then I think then your therapist will ask you about something like casual, like, hey, do you like carrots or something? That's what I think it is. I don't know if I'm super correct on that. I think that's kind of what it's like. And so you're in that way, you're kind of uncovering the memory and you're reprocessing it. So then you're not stuck with that feeling that you had when you initially made that memory. I think that's the gist of it. Because then if it's still in your body unprocessed, that feeling is going to be with you like for the rest of the time until it's like dealt with. And I think that's kind of like what I'm having. So yeah, to put it simply, shit's fucked in my head. Yeah, so are you like focused on like the main memories as well that are like creating these responses, I suppose? But I don't know. I don't know like how like a session is like 90 minutes. Normal therapy is 60 minutes. So I don't know how that's going to work. That's like a lot of time. And apparently you get really exhausted afterwards. It's like super exhausting to do, but hey, if it makes me feel better, if it gets rid of the, well, not get rid, but I definitely have a lot of traumatic memories that come back a lot, and I think about a lot, and then yeah, I can totally see how that would be contributing to the way I feel when I don't feel good. Like I said to my therapist, well, like when I drive, I dissociate when I drive because it's so stressful. And I think stressful situations, I tend to just dissociate. So yeah, I haven't had too many dissociation episodes lately, but it's clear that there are people who have been in my life who have contributed greatly to the issues I'm having. So we need to deal with that. We need to deal with it. And hopefully it'll be a success. I don't know, I'll let everyone know how it goes. It's gonna be a few more therapy sessions until we actually do the EMDR, but like I have to get prepared for it, so that's also another interesting thing. But yeah, apparently they used to use EMDR, they might still do it, on PTSD people. The people with PTSD. And they just found through luck that it also helps with trauma. So, yo! So not exactly PTSD, but PTSD adjacent, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, I don't think this thing was around when I was younger. I don't know. Yeah, so that's like my whole thing about reconciliation, and I don't know what to really do about it, honestly. I have to figure out something. My homework is to write some sort of letter or do a voice recording. Oh god, that wasn't a... Never mind. I have to do a voice recording of me, like, asking for reconciliation. So, I've got to get on to that soon, I guess. But yeah, the next topic I wanted to talk about, Ozempic. I don't know why that's so funny to go from like therapy to Ozempic. Nobody does it like I do. Yeah, so I've been hearing a lot about Ozempic lately. It's kind of hard to escape because it's turned into this thing where, like, if anyone loses a significant amount of weight, suddenly everyone is like, it's Ozempic. They have the Ozempic face. You can tell. You can tell, dude. Oh my god. And the other thing that kind of pisses me off is people are like assuming a lot of people who do take Ozempic for weight loss are just taking like the easy way out and stuff like that. Now, I will say first things first, the people who should be prioritized for Ozempic should be the people who need it to live and continue living, so like the diabetic people. So let me just get that straight. It's actually kind of screwed up that there are people who need it to live and they can't get it because all the fucking skinny bitches, all the California skinny bitches are using it. Girlies, can we stop doing that? Thank you. Yeah, so that's actually quite concerning, and I would say, guys, if you don't need a Ozempic, don't fucking try to get it. Ugh. Actually, can you believe there are some people who like drug dealers who are dealing Ozempic? Isn't that crazy? Oh my god. Anyway, I believe it actually is approved for weight loss, or like taking it for weight loss. I think it is actually approved for that. I'm not entirely certain. I ain't a doctor, but some people were saying like, oh, how could you be taking it for weight loss when it's not approved? I think it is approved for it. I think a lot of doctors actually do prescribe for it, I think. But there are risks when it comes to taking it. Like, there have been reports of increased chances of thyroid cancer. That's the only thing I've heard about, though, but I haven't studied too much about Ozempic. I just think that, like, culturally, a lot of the things that we're saying, or like a lot of the topics around it, are very weird. I feel like society has this very weird, I don't know if it's like a double standard, but this very strange way of talking about people who are like fat or like obese. And there's this idea that, you know, you need to lose weight the right way. Well, I guess you can say the right way can apply to some things. Like, obviously, if you're trying to lose weight, you shouldn't, you know, become bulimic and resort to things that are actually really harmful to your body in order to lose weight. Like, there are ways to lose weight without doing unhealthy stuff. So I would say, like, yeah, the right way would be making better food choices and exercising more and getting enough sleep, enough water. Those are also things that are overlooked when it comes to weight loss. And, you know, it's actually coming out now that women need a lot more sleep than men do. Yeah. Yeah, apparently the studies they did on sleep were always conducted on men and not women, and we're now finding out women need a little bit more. So, girlies, it's time to start getting those 10 hours in. um, yeah, so this idea of like the right way to do it and the wrong way, I kind of get it. But I think we have to be compassionate and remember that there are people out there who do try all the things, but they just cannot lose it. Now, I can't speak on really anybody because I don't know what these people do for life. You know, they might say they're doing the things, but then maybe there's something they're overlooking. I don't know. I don't really know. But then there's people who get the gastric sleeve surgery, and like, would you say that they're losing weight like the not right way? Like, they get a pass. They had to have surgical intervention to lose it. Are people going to judge them? No. Don't judge them because they're doing what they need to do. And I think the worst part is that like everyone who is saying like about like, oh, you didn't do it the right way, you took Ozempic, you had a gastric sleeve, you didn't do it the right way, that's not admirable. All those people saying that are skinny bitches who have never been fat in their life. Like, and it's just mind-boggling that people are so, I don't know, they're just so judgy about this thing. It just doesn't feel right, and I feel like this is why I'm at a loss for words, honestly, because I just feel so bad because when you're like overweight and you're bigger, of course you know that, like you're aware of that, you're probably miserably aware of that, and having people tell you every day about like, oh, you know, you're big, well, you're fat, why don't you lose some weight, like, do people really think that that's helping? They're just bullying people. That's just it, and it's extremely fucked up. And I think the treatment of like fat people, it's been so, I think personally it's been very normalized by a lot of the media we grew up watching. There are so many TV shows and movies where there's like the fat friend, and they're always treated as comedic relief, and then the fat friend always gets with the other fat friend. And it's just and they always bond over their favorite junk food, and it's just like, no one wrote this character thinking that it's an actual human being. They wrote them as a punchline to a joke. And I feel like that's how fat people are just treated a lot of the time. So I don't know, it's not cool. It's very bad, guys. Can we stop? And then there's all this like societal pressure. Well, everyone's telling this fat person that they need to lose weight, so then they do the things, they try, and then when they finally find something that works for them, now it's like bad. Apparently now it's like, oh, well, you got skinny, but you shouldn't have got skinny that way. You should have got skinny the other way. And now it's having another effect on people who actually do get skinny, you know, from putting in the work or like, you know, doing all the right things. And now people are going to just look at them and be like, oh, you did Ozempic, and take away, I guess it's like stolen valor. It's stolen valor. It's like you can't fucking win. You can't win as a fat person. And I feel very annoyed by that. And guys, I think we need to stop being so judgy about people who do Ozempic for weight loss. If they're like within the means. You know what I'm saying? Because obviously the people who are going to die without it should be first in the queue. That goes without saying, I would think. So, yeah, I'm just trying to cover my base there. The people who would die without it, they're first in queue. That is what I'm for. After that, sure, go ahead and use it. I mean, it's one of those things where people go, well, oh, what about the thyroid cancer? What about this and that? Honey, that's their decision to make. I mean, sometimes when you talk to a doctor about the potential risks, you and your doctor are going to be like, okay, well, this is the risks. Okay, are we prepared to, risk these things? And your doctor will be like, well, you're young and healthy and blah, 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 blah. And I don't know. I mean, at that point, I'm just kind of describing a doctor's visit, but if you're an adult person, you're making that decision for yourself, then I'd say go right ahead, because in some cases it might actually be worth the risk if you're that big, because we all know being too skinny or too fat, to say it in blunt terms, both ends have really bad consequences and have really negative effects. So I'm sure in quite a few cases, doctors will look at their patient and be like, look, there are these risks, but to not take the medication to make yourself skinnier or get the gastric sleeve surgery would leave them in an area where that's no better. So, yeah, that's kind of what I've been thinking about Ozempic and like weight and stuff. Again, like I'm a skinny bitch talking about this. I get that. I get that. Unless you were thinking, no. I was gonna make it. That's another thing that I'm trying to. Okay, here is my new goal. I'm gonna stop making like jokes about my own body and weight. So something I've been doing is I've been trying to stop making jokes about like how I'm like stupid. Like sometimes I'll be streaming and I'll make a mistake and I'll be like, stupid idiot. I'll be like, God, you're drawing on the wrong layer, you stupid idiot. I think it's kind of funny, but I decided, you know what, I've got to stop doing that because I'm just putting myself down, and then I think it's going to make other people see me do that and think that they can do that to me. So we're learning to respect ourselves. And so now I'm on a mission to do that with the weight comments. I make comments about my weight, and it's just not funny. I mean, it's kind of like once you do a joke a couple times, it just really quickly loses any jokiness. And when you make jokes about yourself, it's very easy to start believing them. Even if you never thought you would, you start to do it. So, oh yeah, and another thing about Ozempic. People talk about Ozempic face. Like, taking Ozempic gets you a certain type of face. I think that anyone who loses a significant amount of weight in a short amount of time, that's going to have some crazy changes to everything. And then some people saying, well, now their head looks too big for their body. It's like, honey, you've seen this person most of your life at a certain like weight, and now you're seeing them at a much marginally smaller weight. Yeah, things are probably going to look a bit funky. Oprah's kind of going to look funky. I'm not saying she's on Ozempic. She looks great though, but she looked great before anyway. So I'm just saying, we all saw Oprah the way she was for many years. I mean, decades actually. What am I saying? Years, decades. I think she's looked basically the same since I've been alive. So, yeah, of course you're used to seeing her one way. And damn, does that woman got style. She has so much style. I'm trying to think of like other cases where people are like, Ozempic, Ozempic. I mean, I don't know. You know? So, I would say don't feel guilty if one day you find yourself having to rely on some sort of intervention to achieve the things that you want to achieve. I think that for people to shame other people for that and like be like, oh, but the side effects, blah blah blah. It's like, that's their choice, guys. We gotta try to police other people a little bit less. I think. I don't know. I just think that adults are making their own choices, and while I wouldn't make the choice myself, I think the diabetics deserve to have their Ozempic. Hey, I can see why it would be an attractive option, especially if you've been trying all your life to lose what you've got, and suddenly there's a drug out there that can basically guarantee you to I don't know, solve that issue you've been having. Then I can see why that's attractive. I really can, and I wouldn't judge someone for doing that. I mean, someone's personal medical stuff that they've got going on, that's their personal stuff. And y'all, we don't need to be judging people for things when life's already too hard. And I will say this, I think the life of like someone who's fat is way harder because you've got the judgment 24/7. You've got probably family who are commenting on it all the time. If you post anything online, you're probably going to get comments about it too. Because for some reason, people are like convinced that like fat people don't think that they know that they're fat. You know, like there's just like this weird need to comment on people's looks about that. And it's like, it's just bullying, man. We don't like bullying here. Sorry, I laugh a lot when I'm talking because I don't know why I do it. Maybe it's like an awkward thing. It's like an awkward I don't know. Maybe I should think about that. Maybe I'm just laughing at my own jokes. But I wasn't really joking about anything there, so that's kind of funny. Yeah, guys, we don't like bullying here, and I mean that. We don't like bullying. Bullying blows, not in a good way. Yeah, so last week we talked about doom and no motivation and feeling numb. Okay, guys? This week we talked about a reconciliation, Ozempic, and what else did we talk about? Mel Robbins. I have to know if she's Tony Robbins' wife. Or maybe she could be Tony Robbins' sister. You never know, actually. Or maybe they're not related at all. I don't know. We'll have to figure out the tea on that one. I should have looked it up before I did this. Might have to start bringing in my laptop for these things so I can do like research on the go and be like, is Mel Robbins married to Tony Robbins? I wonder if Baskin Robbins is like also Tony Robbins. That would be so random. Alright, well, I think that was everything. Let's see, Ozempic. What else was there? I mean, we discussed the health shit. I think we got it all. Yeah. I might have to come up with like 3 topics next time so I can go for a bit longer, but yeah, well, I guess that's that. Well, thank you for catching up with me, and if you liked the video, then like and subscribe. I put out new videos every Monday, and I can't wait to catch up with you next time. And if you have any opinions about Ozempic, weight loss, reconciliation, going no contact, let me know down below, guys. #relatable. Alright, bye-bye.